Good morning. Thank you for coming out. I sat in a classroom like this, myself many, many years ago. I thought I would start by answering the question, did I get from here to there? And it's been quite a fun and fascinating journey. I came to Harvard Law School in 1980 with the belief that I was going to be a corporate transactional lawyer. I had a background before that. I went to business school at Cornell and became a CPA, worked for a big accounting firm in Houston, Texas, and then came back to Harvard to law school. Got out in '83 and went to work in the corporate department of a big law firm in Washington, D.C., doing bank mergers and real estate deals, etc. But as a very, very young lawyer, I looked around and looked at the guys, and they were all guys, ahead of me, and I didn't want their jobs. I decided that if that's my future, I'm out of here. And so at that time, we were dating, but David Wilkins, who is a professor here, got a job to come back here to teach. And we were on our way back to Cambridge. And while I was at the law firm, I brought in the Marsalis family as clients. And when I was leaving the firm, Branford, who was a young jazz saxophone player at the time, asked if I would think about managing him. And I said, I don't know what that is. I said, but here's the deal. I'll give you 6 months if you give me 6 months. And so David and I moved back to Cambridge, to that building across the street on Mass Ave. And in the second bedroom of our two-bedroom apartment, with Branford Marsalis, I started Wilkins Management. And my folks thought I was on crack. They're like, you're doing what? One jazz musician who, at the time was probably making $60,000 a year. And since I get a cut of that, you can do the math. Within the first 2 or 3 months, I was, pretty much in my PJs all day on the phone. I realized that I really, really loved this. I loved the creative space. I loved the creative mind. I loved the fact that they were living on the edge creatively, just complete freedom. And for me, just the joy of living vicariously through them. I also loved the fact that it wasn't bonds or widgets, that it was, the work product was something that I could be passionate about and very, very involved in. And so we began, and within 3 months, he asked me if I would look at a kid who was a student of his father's, and who, if you know anything about the music business or the Marsalis family, they're pretty tough. Their standards of excellence are beyond compare. And they thought this kid, who was their student, was a genius. And that kid was Harry Connick Jr. And so in 1986, I began with the two of them and made my way around it. So people ask me, where did you learn to do any of this stuff? And I tell people all the time that I'm from Kingston, Jamaica. I grew up in the back of a grocery store. And I think Harvard and Cornell and all of that stuff just put jargon around what I learned to do as a kid, which is to do transactions and sell, package a pound of sugar, except now I'm packaging these gorgeous men. We took off. I signed Branford up with Sting at that time, and Harry began. What was interesting about it is they allowed me to learn on the job. So if you're looking at talent representation, it's about, the most important thing is trust. And what we created was a little family. There are very few instances in my business where the artist-manager relationship lasts this long. These are the people that I started with, that we're 32 years now together. And my company built their careers. About 10 years after that, we took Joshua Redmond, who was a Summa at Harvard College, who was also a saxophone player, and built that career. So we've, sort of the strategy that we took was we were going to build the guys we had and go with them wherever they took us, rather than staying within a lane and managing 10 or 20 people and see who sticks. That was a choice we made, and we made that call very early, the we being me, the royal we. And so we're now, 15 employees. We've done all the work here in Cambridge, very quietly, because I'm not a in front of the camera person, so I don't, for instance, talk to the press. So if you Google me, you won't find much. That's not my role, and I've found that the artist managers who've thought their role was in front of the camera very often get in the way of what the work is. So we do the work in the back, and have built these global careers for these guys. What I say to people is, what is it that got me here, basically, to where we are? And I think the abiding principle for me is don't stop until you self-actualize, basically. I mean, we didn't come here to get these degrees to end up in jobs that we hate. And so it's, I think I tell people that my fallback was always to go back to Jamaica and practice beach law. Okay. But I was not going to be working, if I was going to work 30 hours a day, which you do in anything that you're passionate about, it had to be something that I lit up for every day. And you have choices, and, go for it. Especially if you're young and don't have, kids and mortgages and all of that stuff. I encourage you to dive in, take the risk, and go. And if you fall, you get up and you do something else. That's kind of how you've lived your lives up to this point. What do I actually do? I think if you divide the artist into the art and everything else, we do everything else. And I like to say that what we do is we create a cocoon around the artist so they can create. So my office, I do the top-down strategizing and guide them and negotiate contracts with the help of various lawyers around the country. My office also manages their money because I have training in that arena. I spend a lot of time on managing the brand. A lot of my day is snap judgments with things coming at me fast and making decisions about the impact on the brand. And for me, that's more important than money. And so we've led the way with looking at the career with a long-term vision. And I think that probably the reason why that works in my case is because we have a long-term relationship. I'm not into it for the short-term hit, so that a deal shows up and it, may pay a whole lot of money, more money than they've ever made in their lives, but it's the wrong thing for the future. And we pass, generally. So I have 3 clients, one of whom is Harry, whose career has spanned all forms of platforms in the entertainment business. Two others are jazz saxophone players, one of whom is very, very intellectual musician. So that's Joshua Redman. And so he's very, very focused on the music and creating and composing. And he's, very highly acclaimed around the world, but he stays in his lane. Branford is a wider, spans a wider berth, but he also has completely focused on music. So he's a jazz musician. He plays with symphonies around the world. He's a classical musician. Has collaborated with pop musicians like Sting, and Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead was a big fan of Branford. So he's done a lot with the Dead when Jerry was alive, and still does a little bit. He's done scores for Broadway shows like Fences and Raisin in the Sun and The Mountaintop with Samuel Jackson and Angela Bassett. And he just wrote the score for the Henrietta Lacks movie that Oprah was in. So I give you that to show you that within the confines of my business, that you can manage artists with different focus. And the most important thing for me as a manager is to appreciate where those lines are for these artists. Because many times, outsiders push the artists beyond the boundaries of what's comfortable for them. And artists are very, very different people. They're not interested in things that you and I are interested in. Some people want fame. Some people have no interest in fame. Some people, all they want to do is focus on the craft. So those are two musicians who have stayed primarily in the music vein. Then this kid, Harry, who was 18 when I met him, is an entertainer. And let me just put this in here. And when I first met him, he played piano. That's it. He was 18, he played piano, and he was a piano genius, as told to me by Ellis Marsalis. And then he told me one day that when he was a kid, he used to sing in the clubs in New Orleans. So I said, okay, maybe we can add some vocals to your next CD, which he did. By then he was 19. And then a stroke of luck happened for him with a movie called When Harry Met Sally. Rob Reiner was directing, and Rob couldn't get the rights to the original music for the film. And Rob reached out to a guy who was working at Columbia Records at the time, a guy named Bobby Colombi. Bobby was the drummer and person who formed a band called Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And said, can you tell me if there's any young person who could do this? And we got the call from Rob. And he went to California and recorded for the very first time in his life with a big band. And all hell broke loose. The movie was very successful, and the record was very successful. And so we began. Can I ask you to go to the website now? Thank you.
Should we do a little back and forth more? I'm wondering. I mean, are we all going to do like one?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm almost done.
Yep,
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
I'm almost
okay.
done.
Sorry, I thought we'd just go back. Okay.
I'm almost done, and then he said I should go, and then you
Oh,
go.
no problem. Okay, all right. No worries.
Okay, so what I want to show you is sort of what I do, the breadth of what I do, and I basically over the years. We had, for Harry, because of the kind of music he played, we didn't have a radio. And so I decided that I was going to use film and television as my way of pushing him out into the general public. And so if we go to, those are the records that we've done in his career to date. It's a lot. So then we'll go to the movie career. Yeah. You have the, you can, we'll go to television. And so television is where I will end because that's the current project. So while I'm doing all of this, we're still doing music. You know, there's still performances all over the place, and they're still making CDs, but these things are happening at the same time. And so for 3 years, till the beginning of 2016, I signed him up to be a judge on American Idol. So that's a lot of television exposure. And while we were doing that, I basically put a daytime entertainment show together, partnered with the guys who ran David Letterman's show for 20 years, because Letterman was going off the air, so they came to join us. And the four of us pitched this show, and we sold it across the country. NBC was my producing partner. We tape at CBS in New York, and we're on 212 stations across the country, day and late night. And I, run part of that production. So that's to give you a sense of what we do. 15 people here in Cambridge. We put that together, plus what we do for our other two clients, over 32 years. That's it.
All right, thanks, Anne Marie. Excuse me, Joel.
Yes.
We had a nice conversation before this, and you were telling me about your beginning, how you started, how you got to where you're at today, creating your firm, and tell us about your story, your journey.
Sure thing. Some of what Anne Marie said was very familiar to me as well, because I started at a large law firm myself. I went directly into the motion picture and television department, so I did start out as an entertainment lawyer. This was after having spent getting a summer associate job in a similar firm in Los Angeles and coming back here and swearing up and down I'd never go to LA again because it was so awful. But I went back the next year, took this job, and like you, I would look around and go, oh, I don't know if I need to be these people. And after about a year, I went to a smaller boutique entertainment firm, and I liked that a little bit better. This was feeling a little bit more right. And one of the partners wanted to leave and start his own thing with me, and so we did that. And so about 2.5 years out of law school, we went and started our own little firm. And looking back, it seems like it's probably should have failed, and I think maybe it's harder to do that now. I don't know, because there's a lot of competition. But we did that, and it just kind of slowly, organically grew over time. And I found that my job satisfaction went up each time I got smaller. And so when we started Colden and McEwen, I was theoretically doing similar kinds of work. I was representing directors and actors and television show creators, et cetera. But somehow doing it in your own environment without the kind of history there of an old law firm. Somehow it just felt like fresher and entrepreneurial, and so we just kind of organically grew from there. And you have to have a certain amount of luck, but mainly you have to work very hard and go try to find clients, read scripts, talk people into letting you represent them when they could probably get someone with more experience, et cetera. And you just kind of roll from there. The job, I really love the job. I think one of the great things about being a transactional entertainment attorney that might contrast with many other areas of the law is that you forge these relationships with your clients and you become part of their lives. And so, and so it's like, I have similar clients that I had 20 years ago, and then we have a lot of new ones as well. So we do their deals, we paper their deals, and we give kind of career guidance as well. Like there's a managerial role to it as well, I think, that kind of bleeds in a little bit sometimes. I find it very satisfying, yeah.
And is there a creative aspect to the work that you do?
There can be some. Certainly the clients ask you, what do you think about this? And, you have to choose your words carefully.
Has there ever been a client's piece of work that you just completely thought was off the
Yeah, you
rails?
find something. You go, what was that location you did? It was beautiful. Listen, there are clunkers that happen, and these people are putting themselves out there, and they're taking risks, and they're doing, like you say, we live a little bit vicariously through them. And so you want to be supportive, you want to protect them, but sometimes, mistakes are made, or frankly, they get into personal things, or a public meltdown of some sort, that went wrong, or a breakup, whatever it is, and you find yourself kind of being a little bit of a friend and maybe analyst, and just a support group for them personally, which is, again, I think one of the things that differs from being maybe a corporate lawyer or a litigator, is that you're really dealing with people's lives, and they can be fragile. Creative people can be very outgoing and confident on the outside, but the truth is there can be a lot of sensitivity there. So so again, I think that if you forge these relationships that kind of matter to you over time, I find it to be really fulfilling that can be part of one's career as well.
So how important is chemistry between you and your clients? And you talked about relationships over long periods of time. Mm-hmm. Have there been clients that you've had to fire because the chemistry wasn't right, or clients that you would not even consider? What's a good client to you, and how have you been able to forge these long-term relationships? You spoke about trust, for instance.
Yes. Well, for me, I think it's kind of like any relationship. Some things work and some things don't. And I find that my most successful relationships, and the clients probably feel the same, is when they do what they do best and they let us do what we do best. So what they do best is being brilliant writers, coming up with something like the Fargo show that Noah Hawley did, or we represent Diablo Cody, who wrote Juno, won an Oscar for that, or Michael Arndt, who wrote Star Wars, but also won an Oscar for let's see, this is where I get in trouble. For Little Miss Sunshine. His first script that he ever sold was Little Miss Sunshine. He won an Oscar for it. So, but those kind of people, they trust you, and you go out and make the best deal you can, and protect them in different ways, and there are all kinds of things we have to worry about down the road. What happens if it's successful? What happens if it's not successful? And they tend to let us do our thing. Occasionally, you'll meet someone who thinks that they're a lawyer, or that is smarter than everyone, and they can't get out of their own way. And to me, those are the ones that don't work. I love it when a client challenges me, when they try to make me on my feet, and you care about them and you're passionate about them, so you want to do a great job. But it's a different thing when someone goes, "What about this? What about that?" And you're just like, "Oh God." So there have been situations where I either fire someone or I commit an act such that I'll be fired myself.
So the artist-manager-artist relationship is different.
Yes.
In that it's a lot more intense and a lot more intertwined.
Day to day, yeah.
Day to day. So I speak to them many times a day. I try to engage them when I can in the decision-making process about all the minutia. Not tiny details, but if a big deal is happening, I want them to take ownership of it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm in there with them. And again, the trust for me is in the artist-manager relationship is paramount. They basically have, turn over their lives to you. And those lives include not just, in my case, not just the professional life, but their personal life. We're in it very, very deeply. It's an intense partnership. And I personally have turned away many, many, many people over the years. My clients have done well, so we have been approached a lot. But I made a decision for myself about my life. Yeah.
I had a question. You referred to hiring and retaining attorneys to pay for a lot of the transactions. Could you describe how you personally identify the attorneys to provide those services? How long they have been in relationship, whether you've kept them over the same period of time as a relationship with the client, and what qualities those attorneys possess that make them a good fit for what you're doing?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
So because I have a legal background and have a fair amount of knowledge of transactions, given CPA life, et cetera, I do surgical strikes. I basically, a few things matter. The relationships that the lawyer has, okay? If you're trying to close a deal, it's easier if the lawyer has done deals with a studio, for instance, and knows all the people. That's what I need from them more than what the paper looks like. I'm in the paper at a fairly deep level, and am very involved in the negotiation of the deal. So it's a different kind of relationship because of the training I've had. So those are the kinds of things I look for, and we've had long-term relationships with some people on the music side, on the television side, et cetera. I just changed lawyers because on one deal because the lawyer wanted a percentage of the deal, and I don't do that. I mean, that happens a lot in Hollywood, and my clients don't need to do that because,
That's why you didn't call me.
That's a different business model, right?
That's a
That's the
different
only
business
business model.
for the lawyer, right?
Right.
But I have the ability to do the other stuff for my clients.
And music is a little different, I think.
But this was not a music lawyer.
Okay.
So Joel, why does that business model work for you, for your firm in particular?
So we don't charge we don't do any hourly work at all. We charge 5% of the deals we do, and I think one of the things about our experience, and I think many are, we oftentimes start working with young artists when they hardly can be arrested. So I might read a script and it's really promising, and it's a young kid who just got out of USC. And we might make a tiny option deal for that's no money, and you might put a lot of work into these people for several years before something good happens, and so that's how we charge, and all our competitors do the same. But the other thing is that because of the nature of the relationship between the client and the lawyer, the client should be really feel open to picking up the phone and calling us about anything, anytime. I get calls on weekends, and not getting a bill for $900 every time they pick up the phone. It's a very different kind of you're in it with me. And by the way, sometimes we go down the rabbit hole on a big deal, and the client or maybe someone on the other side says, never mind, I'm not doing this anymore. So maybe we spent a lot of time doing something and, we're not paid. But again, like you say, we're in it for the long haul. We want to do the right thing for the long thing. And so, we pass on things all the time or advise our clients that we think it's a good idea to pass on something because I want to know where this person's going to be in 5 years, not next month, And so, I really like the percentage situation. And yes, we do very well when something really works. but there's also a lot of windows that we have to do. There's, you know, like I'm leasing an office. Can you look at this? Or I'm firing my assistant. Can you do a settlement agreement? Or, you know,
So you're full service in a lot of aspects of the client's
my
life.
neighbor's tree fell on my fence. Can you send him a nasty letter? Like, we do all that stuff, but we don't bill for any of it because when the good thing happens, we're there for that too. So
So
it comes
besides
out
being a good lawyer, what other qualities should a good talent representative have, or must a good talent representative have to actually succeed in the entertainment industry?
I think a couple of things. I think if you're passionate about the media that you work in, whether it's film, television, music, if you're into it, because half of what happens is if you watch, let's say you're a fan of a certain show, and I've had this happen recently. You see a show, like, oh my gosh, who is that kid? Who is that? And you look, and now these days you can actually look up on IMDb Pro and see if they have an agent or an attorney. And occasionally you look them up like, oh my gosh, they don't have anyone. And I know his manager, I didn't know this. And I don't do this much anymore because your business gets to a certain kind of level where it's like enough already. But I did this recently on Stranger Things, you know, the show Stranger Things. I thought the show was unbelievable. It was so fresh. There was kind of it was nothing like it. And there was a kid on there, and I went to New Jersey, and I met with the kid's manager, and I'm working with him now, and he's getting, you know, he's getting these huge endorsements for national companies now, and going to do some cool movies. And so we represent two of those kids now. Why? Because I flipped out for the show and thought it was really amazing and some great talents there. So it's a cool. What was your question again? What? Oh, so I think being passionate about that, and also secondly, I think yes, to the extent you're a people person, you're not. There's a certain amount of needing to reach out to people, to be confident to do that. And I find most people in our business, really contrary to maybe some of the reputation, are nice, decent people. After it's a small community, we figure out who the ones who aren't so much, and you can kind of see them around the corners. But generally speaking, you know, I think we all feel like, well, we're living to fight another day. We treat each other with respect. If I say to a studio, what's your client's quote and how much do they get on this, and I tell them, they believe me because they know that we're, you know, honest and decent and we're going to be around. But I think at base, I think having an entrepreneurial spirit, being confident, being comfortable dealing with people, it's kind of like any business. Like that, those are the things that I think are indicative of a good entertainment lawyer is going to be successful.
I think also at base is good ethics.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that as you've read all of the plays where entertainers get taken by the people who surround them. And in the end, they don't last because they always get busted.
Yes.
So, and the reason why it's so easy to take the people is because they have no interest. They have no interest in this side of the business at all. And so I have all their money. You know, I help them buy cars and set up trusts for the kids and buy real estate. I have everything. And so I think in order to be around for 30-something years is remember your principles and hold on to them at every level, every step of the way, and be kind to people who have not only no knowledge but no interest. I mean, zero. They don't care. I mean, you sit down and you try to. For me, I sit down and I try to give a report on the financial stuff, and they're like,
oh, I know.
they're in a whole nother place.
I did a 20-minute. Yeah.
And so it's so you have to be anchored yourself because it's that anchor that allows them to fly, that allows them to create, up here, because they're not worried about all this other stuff. You've taken the burdens away from them.
I'm reminded, I did one of the biggest deals I've ever done. It was multi-tens of millions of dollars. And the client just trusts us to do everything. You can't even get them on the phone. And so it comes down to a text message. Hey, we're closing this thing. This is what it is. It's really good. And you get something back. Rad, dude. Why am I so lucky? And I guess that's approved.
You had a question?
I do. Have you found that having Lonzo or the law school is a benefit in
I don't know if clients, because I don't walk into, some people do that. I don't walk into a meeting and say, oh, I went to Harvard Law, you know. Sometimes it'll come up organically, but I will say this. I think that, having a degree from an institution like this is invaluable, because there is, especially in the beginning of your career, the entertainment business is extremely competitive. A lot of people think they want to do that. And they can kind of be snobby about it. They can pick who they want. And even though there's amazing students at all kinds of different schools, you know, there is kind of an open the door factor for sure in the beginning. After that, it's on you. The fact that you went to Harvard Law School, no one's going to care. I know some people, the likes of which you were discussing, which maybe they ethically did some things, and it catches up with them, and they get kind of pushed off to the side. So it's up to you after that, but certainly in the beginning, I think it can be a valuable door opener for sure, because people are impressed by it, let's face it, you know.
Well, I think it's also, I mean, if you take your schooling seriously, it's the training. It may not reflect itself in the degree, but it reflects itself in your capacity to do the work.
Right.
And I think that's where the value comes.
You can screw it up after
Yeah.
that for sure, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm curious, so the legal education helped, it certified you to be a
Yes.
lawyer. What other training went into helping you become the quality of representative you are today, beyond that?
Well, for me, I mean, it's my whole career. I think that the business background, probably layered on top of the legal background, has been invaluable. So, you know, I can cut a deal, basically. I can negotiate a deal and cut a deal and understand all the tenets of the deal. And get into the weeds when I need to. Mostly I'm at this level, but I can get down there if the deal starts falling apart and I need to put it back together. But again, I think if people ask me what it is that I get paid for, I get paid for judgment. That's probably the most important thing that I lend to a talent, is when faced with a plate of choices, where do you go and where does it take you? And it isn't necessarily the most obvious route. And I think the reason why, after 30 years of working with these clients, they're still here and still prominent around the globe, is because we've made choices. And I tell people that I've managed the career as like a river flowing downhill and going to tributaries here and there. I'll find a little avenue and I'll make a right turn and check it out and keep going, because the public is not interested in the straight ahead career over 30 years. They get sick of it. So you have to find ways to keep it interesting and keep the artist challenged. And that's what I add,
And
is
Joel,
the judgment.
Just to add on to Anne Marie, one thing I want to add into it, Anne Marie mentioned judgment. Can you develop judgment, plan for judgment? How do you know when you've had good judgment, unless you're looking in hindsight and that was a good choice I made? But if you could address that, and also preparation on top of your legal training, because you started your firm like 3 years after graduating.
Yeah, 2.5 years, right?
And you mentioned it could have been a good decision or could have been a horrible decision. So
Should
what
have been.
prepared you over the years to become what you've become?
Right. Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I think, as Mom said, you can't teach good judgment, you know. But I think in terms of the law school, some of the things that were valuable, I think, is learning to listen. You know, learning to understand that, and especially when you're young, you can be aggressive. And I'm right, and here's all the reasons why I'm right, and that's not a great way to do a negotiation. To pummel someone, even if you kind of have the goods and you're right, because it's like human nature. Anything. So I find that, and this happened in law school too. There's, these rooms can get pretty heated, right, in debate, because people come from different backgrounds and they have different views or political views, and they come out. And there's a way to engage someone without just going, and I think it's happening a lot now out there, is that people are going like this, And if I want to read Breitbart every day, and that's all I think I know, I'm going to have these views about something. But if I'm looking at the Huffington Post, I'm like this, and these people aren't talking. And it's kind of similar to I think, a negotiation, which is to say, if you enter into something realizing that, someone actually does have a point of view, maybe they're not completely on Mars. And if they are, the best way to deal with it is to kind of engage them, say, I understand how you feel, let me explain this, and to be respectful. And I've just thought, like this happened the other day, I called somebody I deal with, I hadn't dealt with him in about a year, and he's like, why are you calling? This is interesting to hear from you. We have nothing going on. I said, exactly. I just want to say hi and see how you're doing. He's like, you do? And he was so appreciative that we do that you think to do that. He was just on my mind. If people don't take the time to do these things, we get busy. If you do things like that, guess what? The next time I do deal with him, it's going to be on a different human level, and you can get to a yes without everyone feeling that like they got to win.
So can I endorse
Yeah.
that? The most important class that I took in the school was negotiations. I took it when Getting to Yes was in galleys. And I came, to law school having worked in the business world as a hard-driving nightmare. I mean, I was a terror. And what I learned out of that class was the value of both parties leaving the table feeling like they won.
Right.
And that has that changed my career trajectory.
Yes.
Completely. So I urge you to take that class or think about it or whatever. But it was for me, it was life-altering.
In our business, by the way, you're going to deal with these same people again, whether
Right.
for that client or someone else.
Right.
If you stick your foot on someone's neck because you can, and you just take them to the cleaners, every last thing you got to win, guess what? It's not going to go well for you the next time. It's better for the business that people just kind of get to the right thing.
Yeah.
Now we often disagree, don't we, on what the right thing is. She's tough. She's a Turner. And we've had, but, at the end of the day, especially I think as we mature and get a little older and realize that life is a longer game, you don't have to, go home and go, boy, did I take advantage of that situation. I mean, it's just not the right way to do it.
How do you see things differently now that you've been practicing and representing the number of years as you have than you saw things when you first began? And what's different in the industry? What's different the way you view things? What's different the way
Right.
people interact with you?
Well, I'd say the business has changed a lot. I talk about that too, but I'd say that as I've gotten a little bit more experience, you learn to try to not take things completely personally, okay? When I was really young, I would just get enraged, and how could this person take this position against my wonderful client who's always right? Now, it still goes to what we were saying. It's better to enter into a situation realizing there's a couple of sides to this, and taking a big picture, longer term view that it's hard to do when you're 26 years old and you're just trying to win everything. And then in terms of the business itself, it's changed radically. When I started, nobody wanted to do TV. If you were a film writer or film director, that's what you wanted to do. And TV was, when your agent called to say, do you want to do this TV show, you knew your career was over. Now they're clamoring at the door, and all these big directors have TV companies, and it's a golden age of television now. There's all these wonderful shows. I can't get through half of them on Netflix and Amazon, and et cetera. And so it's an exciting time to be working, but it's also a weird time because there's too much of it, and there's so much that I think the value of each show has kind of gone down in terms of what the back end can be, because you can't sell 500 shows to syndication. There's nowhere to put them all. The people that used to buy the syndication are making their own shows. So that's kind of been a difference. But on the other hand, it's a good full employment model, because all these shows need staff writers and actors and directors and whatnot. So I think the business is humming now in terms of how it's doing. But it's different in the sense that there's fewer home runs. There's singles and doubles. But the singles and doubles can be shows like Stranger Things or Narcos or This Is Us. These are shows, we have clients on all these shows, and you're really proud to see them. You're really proud to watch them because they're actually quality things that a lot of thought goes into.
I think there are large structural changes that have happened in the business.
Yes.
From the time I got there 30 years ago. There is a finite amount of entertainment dollars that a consumer has to spend, and the choices that that person has today are massive. I mean, it's all over the place, and you throw digital in there, et cetera. So the competition for the entertainment dollar is very, very strong. I think that as an artist manager, if I were entering today, I would tamp down expectations for a client. Because the age of, I take Bruce Springsteen, for instance, as an example. I think it was on his 7th or 8th CD that he became a star.
Record.
Record that he became a star. There, that person would not exist today. After a couple of CDs, you're out the door.
That's right.
You don't make it, you're gone. The same thing in film and television. You have to bubble up to the top requires a whole lot more than before. It's just intensely competitive. And so I think as a representative, you have to be candid with your client, and be attuned to where the seismic shifts are happening in the business. And if in my case, managing people, you have to take them on that journey in order for them to maintain themselves over the years. Because if the artist comes in with an idea and stays with that idea, when the idea dies, they're done. So you have to be quite attuned. The antenna has to be up, and you have to do things like, I have a high schooler at home. I got to learn what he's into, okay, because that's the future, and it certainly is not something that I know anything about, but I have to learn because it's important.
Can a person just graduate and hang a shingle, or whether it's a law firm or a management company, or are there other things that they ought to do before they're ready to run their own company? Should you be a rainmaker, go out and find that future star? Should you affiliate with a firm? How do you get started if you want to get started in the business?
Right. I mean, there's a myriad of different ways. I think you and I are a little bit unusual in that we kind of struck out on our own early-ish, But what I was going to say is that, getting that first job in entertainment is always the hardest one because there's a lot of people who want to do it and like that. So I think the best thing you can do for yourself is just try to start forging relationships. And if you know someone who knows this person who will take an informational interview with you, say there's no obligation, I just want to come and hear about what you do. Sometimes people do that with me, and they'll leave with 3 names, and I'll say, this person was really terrific, and I'll call another firm that I think maybe could use someone, and this is how it works. I think some people get out of law school and they have law school debt, and they need to go take a job and kind of work on that. If that's the case, I think getting any kind of transactional job is good experience. It's reading contracts, it's learning about indemnities and representations and warranties and all the things we have to do in entertainment as well. So whether that's a corporate job or something like that. But, I think most of the jobs are going to be in LA, a lot of jobs in New York. And so if you really want to be an entertainment lawyer, it is hard to not be in one of those 2 places, I think. You've done an amazing job of doing what you did from here. It's just incredible. But in film and television, certainly, and I think just kind of being there and being available to meet people is the best thing you can do. And a lot of people make the jump, and there's some larger firms that do some kind of entertainment work, like O'Melveny and Myers in LA is a very rich breeding ground. A lot of people I know came from there, or the firm I started at, Mitchell, Silverberg, and Knupp, same thing. They're bigger firms that will take a chance and hire someone out of school. The smaller boutique entertainment firms tend not to, but
That's what I was going to say. That
it's tricky.
I think that if you're right out of school and you're really interested in this arena, your chances are the smaller firms won't hire you. But the advice I got when I actually worked for Silverberg one summer.
Oh, Mitchell?
In LA.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Right. I worked, my project was to research John Hinckley's capacity to contract, because Devo was going to record one of his poems.
Oh my gosh.
You remember Devo?
Oh wait, was Abe Summer that, were you in the music department?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Whoa.
Anyway, so
We gotta talk.
small world.
Yeah. Okay.
So my advice would be to go work for a corporate transactional
Yes.
firm where you can learn how to put a deal together. That would be the first step I would take if you're really interested. And then you can transfer that skill set to going to work for an entertainment law firm if that's what you choose to do. And while you're doing all of that, I think the goal is to keep your eye on the ball on what training you need. You need to know what area, where the gaps are in your knowledge base. And so if you came in with a strong, transactional background, then maybe you need to go learn about the business of film or the business of music, and guide yourself. You know what your skill sets are. Guide yourself and figure out where those are so that when I never thought that coming out of school I knew anything. So it was always, everything was about training for me, about how do I get to that place where I can stand confidently on my own 2 feet. And for me, it was always preparation. So, go get trained. And training doesn't stop once you graduate. It, take 5 years and learn about what that trade is and what you need to get there.
Was there anything that surprised you about the business that you're in your imagination as a recent graduate that you encountered that it was unimaginable?
I was surprised at how bad some of the people were that I had to deal with. Many artists latch on to people who are their friends or, their buddies, and they do a tremendous disservice to the talent because they have no training. I see deals all the time where I'm trying to help the other side because it's not, they don't know what they're doing. And so that's, that was a shock to me because, and it was even more so back, when entertainment was a bigger piece of the pie and there was a lot of money, so you could get a lot of money and still leave a lot of money on the table. And that was a disconnect for me.
I have one final question because we're at the end. I want to ask, what's fun about your work?
What's fun? Well, the clients can be a hoot. So there's that. They're creative. They're interesting, like that. But also at base, the entrepreneurial part of it, where I might come to work and say, "Oh, I got this and this to do," and then bring the phone rings, and it's something out of left field you didn't see coming, and you're suddenly going down a path on a deal or a project or something like that you just didn't even know about until then. So it can really move on a dime, and unlike, I think, if you're in litigation or corporate where you may be doing a huge transaction that takes over your life for months or even years at a time, we're doing a lot of different things. You do less because you're a manager, so you have to really, but the entertainment lawyer can have a lot of clients and have a lot of matters open, and it can be very varied in all kinds of different media, and we learn as we go, and theater, books, all of it, so.
My fun for me is that I have no idea what the next hour in my life is going to be like.
Yeah.
And I love that. I would get bored if I were set to sit down with a stack of things that I had to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I really feel like I am providing a service to creativity. That if we didn't exist to buffer the very fragile creative talent, and sadly, we know many in our business perish because they have nobody to hold them back or to help them. And so for me, it's I feel good about my day, and I'm happy about that. I think there was a question up here. Okay.
Yeah, I just have a question. When you build such a long-term relationship with an individual, and as a manager, just looking on it from the other side, how do you ensure that you take care of yourself as a manager so understand that you have a firm and you've been available to work with a lot of artists from the affected community to you as an individual.
They do. And I have people in place. I have accountants, I have lawyers, I have other people that buffer them. But you're absolutely right. They are interested in, it's like a marriage. They're interested in that relationship. That's the relationship they trust. I have tried, have not been successful at setting up transitions, because the other thing is they're artists and they're very emotional and they have no interest in dealing with mortality. Okay?
Well, plus we're going to live forever.
Right. They have no interest. And so there are buffers in place. And, you know, I'm trying to, you know, train people to come along, to be in that place. But it's a risk. And it's a risk they seem very willing to take. Maybe I wouldn't take that risk if I were them. But that's the nature of the relationship.
Well, we're 5 minutes over,
Yes.
and if there's no other questions, we're going to thank Anne Marie and Joel for enlightening us.
Thank you.